We're live. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'll call the Monday, May 11th, 2020 meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Deb Polly,
Here.
Tom Vogel,
Here.
Sandy Burke,
Here.
Connie Hennon,
Here.
Lauren Pedersen,
Here.
Rob Langheim,
Here.
Ryan Daynard.
Present.
Olivia? Olivia, are you present?
Oh, sorry. I don't believe she is.
Okay. Okay, the first item on the agenda is consideration of the agenda. We did not have anybody request to speak or any changes to the agenda, I believe.
No changes.
So I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Lauren, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Rob. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Deb Polly,
Yes.
Tom Vogel,
Yes.
Sandy Burke,
Yes.
Connie Hennon,
Yes.
Lauren Pedersen,
Yes.
Rob Langheim,
Yes.
Ryan Daynard.
Yes.
Motion carries. No public comment. Jordan Pride Awards. We have two special awards tonight. I will turn it over to Mr. Helgerson.
All right. Our first award, and hello to Abby, is for Abby Olerking. And Abby raised money to be donated towards the elementary school book program. So we want to recognize Abby for her forward thinking and for her generosity and for caring so much about the kids, especially our elementary students. So thank you, Abby, for doing that for our kids. So we have our first Pride Award to Abby Olerking.
Thank you.
Abby, do you want to say anything about your project?
What do you want me to say?
Why don't you tell us what you did, how you raised the money?
So for my NHS project, I went and talked to a lot of the local businesses from Jordan and pretty much just asked them if they'd like to donate. And originally we were going to try to collect books as well, but then after COVID, that plan didn't quite turn out completely. So then we ended up just giving the money, and me and Miss Hess are picking out books for the elementary school.
Awesome. Great. Thank you for doing that.
Thanks, Abby. We have a certificate for you, and we'll get that to you when we do our collection, or we'll get it out in the mail, okay?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
You're a great role model for our students. Great
Nice
job.
job.
Thank you.
And our second Jordan Pride Award this evening goes to Dave Sywick of Sywick Lumber and Millwork. And I noticed that Steve McClellan is on the meeting tonight. So Steve, do you want to talk a little bit about what Sywick's did in terms of helping our students with materials, but also that, I guess, entrepreneurship type model?
Sure, thanks for having me. Dave graciously donated materials. I shouldn't say donated, but provided materials for two 10 by 20 camper cabins for the building trades class in the industrial tech department. Basically, I would say there's a considerable value in that financially. And what will happen with those is the students will build them and Dave will sell them. So it's no cost to the district, no hassle to the district. We just provide the student hours and basically the learning. The other opportunity was, as I just said, the students were able to put their learning into action by building these and seeing two structures come together, or the idea of the two structures coming together. We had a little bit of a hold, as you know, but they were involved in the designing, the planning, the ordering, and we got the floors created, but again, we'll pick that up next year. But the students were able to see, with the help of Dave and what he's provided, basically how the planning goes and how the basic floor framing goes at this point.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve, for helping to facilitate that project too, and working with Dave and the local business. That's exactly the type of cooperative partnership that we want to certainly foster
Yeah.
in our district. So thank you for doing that as well.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. I also want to thank you for working with St. Francis on creating the straps for the masks for the essential workers at St. Francis. Thank you very much for your work on that also.
Thank you.
Okay? You'll be getting an award, or Dave will be getting the award mailed to him also. So thanks for
Great.
your work on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
you.
Okay. Discussion on Southwest Metro facilities and possible purchase of Dean Lake's building.
So Deb and I can provide an overview of what this is, and I thought it would be wise because I know a purchase agreement is forthcoming with Southwest Metro. So Southwest Metro Intermediate District, which we belong, are a member. They have multiple sites in both in Carver County, obviously it's Scott County,
Right, I believe that would be
Wright
right
County
up
as
there,
well,
I
up in
think.
Buffalo. And they have multiple sites that really had to make a decision about. So there's multiple programs in the Shakopee Town Square, which is where the movie theater is, the older movie theater. It's where the Shakopee School District offices are. There's a number of Southwest Metro programs there. And then they have another building out by Canterbury Park. It's called the Valley Green Building. It's right next to the CAP agency. Southwest Metro actually owns a piece of that building. Going back to the Shakopee Town Square building, there's no ownership there by Southwest Metro. That's all through a lease agreement. So knowing that the Scott County and the CAP agency are interested in selling their portion of the Valley Green building, there was an option to purchase there and consolidate the programs from the Shakopee Town Square into that building, or look at a different facility because Southwest Metro does have some additional needs. So they looked at all three sites. They looked at the current Shakopee Town Square. There's some opportunity to lease additional space there. There was the opportunity to purchase space at the Valley Green building, or the option to look at a different facility. And we had a task force in which Deb and I were members of that building task force. And at the end of the day, really it made the most sense to the task force to look at what's called the Dean Lakes building. It's the old R.J. Ryan building. It's not too old. It's actually built in the 2000s. Very nice facility. Actually, in my opinion, it's set up extremely well for education. There's 50,000 square feet on the bottom level and 50,000 square feet on the top level. So they're looking at purchasing that building and then renting out a sizable portion of that building to an organization such as a community college or a series of community colleges, and maybe the University of Minnesota as more of a satellite type higher ed institution in Scott County, which there are none currently. So it's a focus of Scott County as well, and scale has a subgroup that's been working on looking at developing that higher ed partnership. So that's a potential fit as well. It's not a guaranteed fit, but it's a potential fit. So in your packet, board members, and you can all see online, there's a breakdown that Darren Kermis, the superintendent of Southwest Metro, provided for us all. And I think it makes a lot of sense, and I'll let Deb share her opinion as well, but I think it does make a lot of sense to move forward with a purchase agreement. So Deb and I both have given our initial blessing. It doesn't mean it's final. Each board would have the ultimate decision on whether to approve the purchase or not, but in order to secure the facility, we gave the thumbs up to go ahead and work on a purchase agreement. Deb, do you want to add?
Yeah, there's a lot of issues with the Shakopee Town Square building that they've had for years. You know, the access with buses, the too many entrances because of the level of kids that they have there, and not mental health, day treatment program, our PAYS lab, and the programs that are there. There's just a lot of issues with that I'm on the Meet and Confer Committee, and it's come up every year it comes, or every meeting it comes up with issues there. Also with the CAP agency building, where currently they have their main offices and they have their ABE program and some other programs. They're looking at over $1 million, I believe, in roof repair and the huge parking lot, which is overdue for some major reconstruction. So we'd be looking at major costs there. The Dean Lakes building is right by Shutterfly. It is an absolutely beautiful building for the price. The parking lot is in good shape, very excellent shape, and it has excellent access for the students, the level of students that we would be having. With the cost comparison that Mr. Kermis laid out shows that actually it would be a cost savings by going that route. So ultimately, this will be coming, after the superintendents meet and make their final decision, it'll be coming to each of the boards, and each of the boards will have to approve it, otherwise it won't fly. So this is just kind of an overview of where we're at with it and why we think it's a good deal.
Yep.
I believe there's some other issues with that CAP building. Shakopee had been originally looking at that area to do some expansion with the track and
South,
stuff,
yeah.
so that there's not even real security in staying in that building. So
They can't take it via eminent domain because it's not an infrastructure piece, but they're looking at developing that piece of property in the future as part of the River South development.
So anyway, that's
So
just a
the,
heads
so
up.
the end result then is taking the Shakopee Town Square and the Valley Green and putting it in the Dean Lakes building.
Correct.
Correct.
And then there's program expansion space as well, obviously. And the nice part about owning the whole facility is, let's just say that the University of Minnesota or Normandale decide that they want to have a satellite program there. I think it'd be a nice incubator space to determine whether or not that model will work. And eventually they'll build their own building, which allows Southwest Metro, it's going to expand and grow. I mean, we've added several associate districts, Bloomington most recently. It's a huge district, and it's just going to demand more and more space because we're going to have to build more and more programs within that Southwest Metro suite.
And the 401 building in Chaska, I believe, is pretty much at capacity, so it would even offer the opportunity to possibly move some of the programs out of there.
When you say 401 building, that's the one downtown?
Yep.
The one
The
downtown.
old high school? Or-
Yep.
Right, yep, yeah.
So, as Deb alluded to, there's a superintendent's team meeting Thursday, and then next week is the Southwest Metro Board meeting. So if you have any questions or things that you want me to bring forward, I certainly can do that.
Do you want to talk maybe about how the cost implications will work on that, Matt?
Oh, in terms of what our costs implement?
Yeah, how the costs would be divvied out and stuff.
Yep, so it's just like any other, it's based off of our usage and our, the number of students that we have, and they take that percentage, and then basically it's a lease levy. So our district, when we do our taxes each year, when we do our, what's it called? Amy, are you on the call? Help me out. When we do our levy authority, Southwest Metro there's a separate piece within that levy authority where we have to put in for Southwest Metro. So it's not.
Yeah, it's not the summer levy when we claim those expenses.
Yep, it's part of the levy that's done over the summer.
Yep.
It's approved by July 31st, right, Amy?
Yes.
Okay. And then we have a separate line item, and we would pay our portion for our pupil units. Amy, do you want to expand on that anymore? It's pretty high.
No, I think we pretty much covered it. I mean, we get it in the summer levy, and then Southwest Metro invoices us for the amount of that levy for the lease. And it's divvied up between the members like Matt said.
So our citizens, they've always been paying a lease levy portion for Southwest Metro. So You're just shifting from one, paying from one to the other. And they also, long-term facility maintenance is figured in here as part of that cost savings. It's just, the premise is that the short-term, there'll be less LTFM expense, which is also a local levy on member districts. So it's basically saying you're gonna reduce that impact, but you're gonna increase the impact of the lease levy. And in the end, there'll be a cost savings. Does that make sense? Did I answer the question, Deb?
Yep, thank you. Okay. Number 8, discussion on grading practices for distance learning.
All right. Aaron is joining us, and actually, I just want to say, Aaron is actually participating on a Department of Ed call, representing our district tomorrow with some larger districts. And Aaron, you can share what those other districts are, but we are the smallest district participating on that. And I think Aaron is one of, what, 5? Is that correct? 4 or 5? And Jeff has been part of those discussions and actually said, hey, would you ever think about allowing a district like Jordan to participate, to provide a school of our size that perspective. So Aaron's actually going to be sharing our grading practices tomorrow on that call. So I'm going to turn it over to her to share a little bit about the equity and grading during distance learning, and then take any questions that you might have.
All right, sorry, my computer wasn't really working there for a second. Yes, Visner recommended me for tomorrow's MDE thing, and I'm one of 4 with South Washington School District and Okehennepin and Roseville. So yeah, it's kind of exciting. And we'll just be talking about equity and grading during distance learning, which is exactly what we're talking about now. The major thing is as a leadership team, and I know the summary of the plan was in the board notes, but as a leadership team, we started talking about grading practices during this time, really at the onset of distance learning, knowing that there was going to be unique equity issues, some that have always been here and are now just brought to the limelight, and others that would be new specifically because of distance learning, and how to really lessen those impacts to develop a fair and equitable grading plan. So we started talking about that, right away at the onset of distance learning, and those discussions really ramped up once the order was extended through the rest of the school year. And then last week, so we already had our plans pretty much in place. It was on May 1st discussed with the teachers during that staff development time. And then the following week, MDE came out with some guidelines. And luckily, our plan that we already had in place did align with those guidelines. So basically, in the elementary grades K through 4, students will receive that traditional ESPN for work completed through quarter 3. And then all the work done during distance learning, teachers will continuously provide feedback and descriptive feedback on that work to support student learning, because feedback really is that key to continue engagement and learning during this time. And then any work completed during distance learning would be used to perhaps raise the grade, but it wouldn't lessen the grade. So if a student was at a S, perhaps if they really focused hard during distance learning and really showed some growth, that student could be bumped to an E, but an S wouldn't go down to a P in the elementary school. And during distance learning, the focus is truly on teacher feedback of the learning, which really research shows has bigger impacts on achievement than actually giving a grade anyway. So it's a better practice all along to keep, even after distance learning. So that's the plan for K4. And then the plan for grades 5-12 is slightly different, primarily because, of course, at the high school, those grades go on the transcripts and they have greater impacts beyond secondary education. So teachers will continue to communicate progress using that A through F grading scale throughout all of distance learning, But then at the end of the semester, grades will be submitted using specific guidelines. So students who earn the score of a traditional A, B, or C will get that as their final grade. However, no students will receive a D or an F because of the impact that can have on transcripts that is unfair during this distance learning time. A pass will be given to any student that puts in effort during distance learning. And a student who does nothing throughout the distance learning will earn that no grade, so no credit will be given. But those students, and this is part of MDE's guidelines, those students will receive additional time to make up any work in order to receive that credit. Now, that's for 512, and of course at the high school level, students taking PSEO, CE, or CIS courses will have to adhere to the grading policies at that post-secondary institution. So for example, for Intro to Ed, I would have to continue following Normandale's guidelines. So that's kind of the grading system in a nutshell, and we really do, it adheres really nicely to MDE's guidelines. And it also kind of mitigates some of the equity issues and the long-term impacts that having an F on a transcript could get. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, I guess. Also, the alternate end of the year schedule that allows for those 5 days of specific intervention time aligns perfectly with MDE's guidelines that students should be allowed, extended time to make up any work as well. So having that in place really does help support those students. And I think it's important to note too that, equity issues during distance learning, they're widespread and they're not necessarily the same issues that were in front of us when we had students in the classroom. They're not, just cultural or socioeconomic. It's new things that are coming up, like high school students who are doing care for younger children and then working and then still having to do their distance learning on the side. And so we just have to be really, really cautious to support all those needs. Visner, am I missing anything?
Nope, you nailed it. I think that's exactly it. Good job. That's why you're presenting tomorrow in front of MDE people.
So question for you, Aaron and Jeff and Ben, is this, say there's a, whatever, pick a student, 9th grade student that's taking social studies, not college level, whatever. They're either, they're at a D grade level, so they would get a P for pass. Do they have to take the class over, or do they?
Nope. A pass is they'll earn credit for that course.
Okay.
They just wouldn't have the D on the transcript that would bring down that overall GPA, because a pass doesn't impact the GPA like that.
Okay.
Yep.
Aaron, question.
And then,
sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I guess I was wondering how did you come up with kind of the cutoff of a C?
That was actually more Visner and looking. So we looked at a ton of different things that experts were saying to do during distance learning and what other school districts were doing. And so Visner came across a plan similar to this that really had that A, B, or C. But really it is that C is right on the cusp of actually showing that mastery with the standard. Whereas the D, there's very little difference between a D or an F and really showing that mastery of the standard.
Right. I guess where I'm going for is what happens if you're in a situation where distance learning, and to your point, where there's other kind of extenuating circumstances that are kind of resulting from kind of the distance learning piece. And let's kind of pick, kind of the extremes that you have an A kid that now all of a sudden, for whatever reason, is starting to fall or falter. And now they're demonstrating kind of C-like kind of test or behavior. A gap between kind of an A and a C is something where, you could cite that distance learning is potentially having kind of an impact in terms of kind of where you're seeing kind of that differential. And is there an option, I guess, kind of in this plan where the pass comes in, or is it that if you have a C or a C minus, you're going to have the letter grade. But if you show progress, yet you get a D, then it's a pass. And so therefore you're not impacted in terms of what the letter grade kind of has. Just trying to kind of understand what those boundaries are and what we're kind of hoping to achieve. Because I know that other districts are doing this a little bit differently in terms of the letter grade versus the pass.
Yep, some districts across the board are doing a straight pass-fail.
Or at least providing the option.
Yep, so some districts like Eastern Carver County are also providing that option. But really and we looked at that as well, but really what a lot of some of the experts on grading are kind of saying in regards to that option is that it can definitely interfere with that engagement piece as well throughout, kind of knowing that, oh, I always have that fallback of just picking the pass, where we really do still want students to try to focus on learning. And because of the size of our district, I think that we're unique in that we have been making contact and reaching out with students daily, weekly, and kind of working with them along the way. So when you're talking about, a student who dropped from an A to a C, and we're seeing specific, just being checked out, teachers also, and also through the building principals, have the autonomy to work with those kind of grades specifically, and maybe it can be determined on case by case, but it wouldn't be policy overall. And then all grades, and this is also, this is just good practice, but also part of MDE's guidelines. Students can continue to hand in that work, not just during intervention time. So if a student has fallen off on, like from that A to a C, they can still raise that grade as well through intervention time and even into the summer by some of that work completion.
Intervention time, meaning the assumption is that they didn't turn in homework assignments, or intervention meaning they didn't do well on a test for whatever reason and have the ability to do makeup?
Both. So they could hand in any missing work that maybe is impacting their grades, or a redo on those assessments, like redoing a test, or redoing a project, or turning in a project or something like that for the first time as well. So it's for both summative and formative assessments, but of course summative assessments are going to have the greatest impact on the grade to redo those. Is there anything else on the C piece?
Okay.
Yeah, I think I can add to that, Aaron, and I think that's the key piece, Rob, is that we feel that with our redos of tests and the ability to continue to turn things in, if a student wanted to stretch this out into mid-June or mid-July, I don't think that's in their best interest, but if they felt like that's the best way to show that they had learned the materials and they had mastered that subject and it took that long because of distance learning, we would accept that and change their grade at that point. So let's say that student A has a C when we post grades on June 1st. If that student communicated that and wanted to continue to work towards a higher grade and show their mastery, we would allow them to do that. Does that make sense?
Got it. Nope, it does. I'm just trying to kind of reconcile the policy that it looks like we're going down versus some of the other surrounding districts, and just making sure to be able to kind of communicate our rationale.
Yep. And some districts
The other thing,
oh, sorry. Go on, Ben.
Go ahead, Aaron. Go ahead. Nope, go ahead.
Nope, go ahead.
Since the start of distance learning, the thing that our staff has been preaching and we have been preaching is to give kids and give each other grace through this process. So we are going to be erring on the side of giving kids grace and giving them the opportunity to make things up, and show and demonstrate their level of knowledge on the content that they're learning. So I think that's and Jeff and Aaron said it well, but I think it's really important that we're going to be giving kids lots and lots of grace as we go through this, because all of us are faced with different issues during this.
It's going to be interesting to see how higher education sorts this out too. because probably not too much of an impact on the 2020 grads as far as, college plans and whatnot, given that it's the final quarter, but you're going to have 3 years worth of kids from a high school level that are going to be impacted by, to your point, Rob, the fact that they gave grades in Jordan and it was pass fail in another school district, and for competitive universities, how do you sort that out? How do you differentiate that? And it'll be interesting to see if that just changes the methodology for, more towards test scores, or I don't know, but just changes the admissions approach.
Yeah, and well, that's part of the problem actually with the pass. So right now, how a pass translates to post-secondary institutions, it makes participating in athletics or getting through the NCAA clearinghouse, things like that, really challenging. So actually having a pass on your transcript going into post-secondary does have long-term impacts, negative impacts for students. Now, MDE,
tell me more about that. I guess I'm not clear on that. So does it impact your GPA? Does it just because
taking
it
classes, counting? No, it impacts counting your high school classes to count for your preparation for college. So if you're gonna, participate in athletics or things like that, you have to have so many certain requirements met. Does that make sense?
No, I guess where I'm going with that is that, okay, so I'm strictly looking at this from a high school perspective, where your transcript is going to carry if you want to go to college or undergrad. So I'm looking at competitive 4-year colleges. The kind of the three kind of areas are your GPA, how you score on your ACT, and kind of what your application looks like. And so kind of with a pass fail versus kind of the traditional GPA, and let's assume that you hit all the credits, so you're able to kind of get through that. And I'm just using the example, let's say you're taking an elective class and something happens where you kind of fall off the horse a little bit. You had an A going into COVID, now you have a C. Does that impact it from a GPA perspective? Is it just that it's not a letter grade, and so therefore the admissions office is kind of flagging that? Because again, I guess I'm viewing this kind of from the lens of, we want to make sure our kids are prepared as possible, and that we want them to be just as competitive as Eastern Carver or Shakopee or Prior Lake or wherever in terms of whatever they're kind of aspiring to do, and just kind of wanting to make sure we have that kind of piece in place. And I didn't think that if you had 1 or 2 pass fails that significantly impacted your transcript, but maybe I'm wrong.
I can speak to that. So there's 2 pieces, and to answer your first question, Rob, I think if your student has a C on their transcript due to COVID, it's gonna count as a 2 instead of a 3 for a B or a 4 for an A. So it's going to have some effect, but over a grand scheme, that 1 C won't. It's not going to change a kid from a 4.0 to a 3.0. It's going to, it's going to make them a 3.8 or something like that if that's their only blip on their transcript. Second thing is MDE requires us for the next at least 3 years to put on our transcripts that what our grading practices were during the distance learning program. So that's part of our MDE requirements on our transcript. So we will have what our grading policy was during this distance learning, so that schools can look and say, oh, okay, this is what they did during this time. And the third thing that Aaron was talking about was with the clearinghouse. What the clearinghouse looks at for NCAA eligibility for athletics. I know that doesn't affect everybody, but the pass grade, so a pass counts as a D in the clearinghouse's eyes. Now they have, for this year, they're saying they're going to ignore that. But normally in the clearinghouse, a pass equals a 1.0 on GPA. And so when they look at your core GPA for clearinghouse eligibility with the NCAA, that'd be a 1.0, which is a significant hit. But they are not doing that for at least this 2020 graduating class. They have not pushed out past 2020, but I would assume that they'll push out past that.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question kind of following up on that. I was wondering in terms of, so if you got a pass for a grade, when you're applying to college and when you are putting in like what you're, like obviously you submit your transcripts and all of that, and they're trying to put you into various classes, and I'm sure this would vary by college. But I would wonder that if you had a class that you just had a pass in, if that would even count. Like you have certain prerequisites for certain college classes. And so I worry that maybe if there was a pass for that, then that wouldn't count for that prerequisite. Is that correct, Erin or Jeff? Do you know?
Honestly, it's really going to depend on the post-secondary institution. And there's so much ambiguity around it right now that it is hard to tell, to be honest, because we haven't seen it. Now, I would say pre-COVID, that would impact it. But I guess now we have yet to see, because we haven't seen that transition to post-secondary yet.
Right. I kind of figured that, but I just wanted to know what you just said is pre-COVID, would that have made an impact? Because then we have to kind of figure out, okay, people have to make a decision like, okay, well, pre-COVID it did. We don't know what it's going to have an impact on going forward, but it's something to think about if you're thinking about taking a pass-fail.
Yeah, and I think you're talking, Sandy, more of high school level classes, not our like CIS or CE classes, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I think all the schools, basically on what we're hearing, colleges, post-secondary institutions, I think are being pretty flexible and pretty understanding, especially right now. And I hope that they continue to have these conversations as we move down the line, because obviously, as I have a child who's a junior, you have a child that's a sophomore or freshman, or whoever we have down the line, different students, that I think this will continue for the next 3 years. I'm confident about that based on my conversations with Amy and things at Gustavus. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Well,
And just one last thing for me too. Sorry, Matt. One last thing, just so you know, some of the other schools that we've worked with this policy, Waconia is one of the people we stole part of this from, and New Prague are also using a similar policy. So those are two schools around us too that are using a similar policy to what we're using here. I know Belle Plaine is using something similar. They are actually expanding what their pass looks like percentage-wise, but we're not defining what our lower end of our percentage. Like they're saying 40% and above is a pass. We're not doing that. We're talking about their effort, the student's effort, and communication as that threshold for the bottom of the pass. So that's just a few other schools around us.
Yeah, all I was going to say was in regard to the ACT. We have the ACT on June 2nd. Is it right, Jeff? 2nd or 3rd?
Correct.
I mean, there's some question whether or not we'll be able to host that. So there's also been some conversation, correct me if I'm wrong, from colleges and universities on whether or not there's an exemption of the ACT.
It already is for a lot of schools. I mean, St. Thomas doesn't require it. Gustavus doesn't require it. MSU Mankato doesn't require it. But they don't require it for admissions, but there may still be requirements for scholarship.
Placement. Yeah, air placement too.
Yep.
Right.
Could I ask a question? Are we still doing the honor rolls then?
That's a great question, Connie, and one we really haven't talked about, but I would assume, because we still have A, B, and C grades, I would say yes, we are. But it really hasn't been talked about, sorry.
I just know it's important to some people that they didn't want the pass fail. They wanted their letters so they knew where they were.
Perfect. I'm glad that they have that motivation.
And that's another piece, Connie, that we also talked, not the honor roll, but the other piece that going away from just some districts have done just pass fail. There's no traditional grades at all. And we had that conversation as well. But we also want to make sure that we are being equitable to all students. So there are students who, maybe they do have the supports at home, maybe they don't, but they are working really, really hard during distance learning to earn A's and B's. And we want to make sure we honor that at the same time. So for those students, that grade can also show on the transcript. So the equity goes both ways, not just for struggling students, but also for students who, you know, are maybe flourishing during this time, and they want their work represented in that A. So it's kind of, you know, an equity issue across the board for all students. So trying to find that sweet spot that really meets the needs for everybody is important.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you for your work on this. I really like the plan. I think it's a good idea. Anything we can do to motivate student achievement, to motivate the students to try is important. So thank you. Okay, thank you. On to consent agenda. We have the minutes, monthly finance reports, donations. We have Mighty Cause, $45 for food shelf. Abby Olderking, $1,000 worth of books to JES, and another $355 for her project. We have the hire of Nordic ski coach Lisa Jameson. I'm going to back up. We have the wellness policy. I did have one question about that, and I know I should have pulled this from consent, but I didn't. I'm sorry. Are we, the part that says, under no conditions can a student be denied recess? I kind of struggle with that because anytime we do a total mandate, we're setting ourselves up for litigation. And I think there may be, obviously the kids, more than likely, if they are having an issue, they need the recess time, but I just hate limiting us to a specific mandate like that when there could be cases where it's number 6 in the policy. I should have pulled it out. Anybody else have any issues with that or catch that? There was a lot of red markups on the wellness policy. Okay. We have the hire of the retirement of Joy Allen, high school paraprofessional, resignation of Kyle Johnson, girls basketball coach, resignation of Ashley Jurek, dance coach. And then we have the contract renewals of all of the winter coaches.
I think you missed the new hire, Lisa Jameson. I didn't.
Yeah, I said that
Gotcha.
before I did that, before the wellness thing.
Gotcha.
So, so I'll entertain a motion to approve consent.
So moved.
We have a motion from Lauren. Is there a second? Looking for a second.
I'll second.
Second, Ryan. Discussion? Hearing-
I just wanted to say I will be abstaining, given the fact that I'm on the list.
Where were you on the list?
Fine.
Oh, yes, the coach, okay. Thank you. Okay, roll call?
Deb Pauley,
Yes.
Tom Vogel,
Yes.
Sandy Burke,
Abstain?
Connie Hennon,
Yes.
Lauren Pedersen,
Yes.
Rob Langheim,
Yes.
Ryan Dainert.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next, we have the approval of the 2019-2020 graduates. And the list was provided in our packet along with additional students that are enrolled elsewhere that will be receiving a Jordan diploma. So I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Rob, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Lauren. Discussion? Hearing none. Roll call?
Deb Pauley,
Yes.
Tom Vogel,
Yes.
Sandy Burke,
Yes.
Connie Hennon,
Yes.
Lauren Pedersen,
Yes.
Rob Langheim,
Yes.
Ryan Dainert.
Yes.
Motion carries. Review and act on the reclassification of the TOSA position to an ADSIS grant-funded behavioral interventionist teacher.
Yep,
Mr.
so,
Helgerson.
we had made a budget reduction of the 512 teacher on special assignment, And we're proposing to reclassify that as a behavioral intervention teacher for just the middle school, and also provide some data to do some data analysis work as well. Excuse me, the district obtained an ADSIS, which stands for Alternative Delivery of Specialized Instructional Services grant to fund the position. And this reclassification, in combination with the reclassification of the remaining K4 TOSA to Achievement Integration Dollars, which is another restricted fund, will save the district funds in the end. So we were able to find a way to retain the position through the grant, reclassify it. I know that Ben had a conversation with his faculty about it, and there's an understanding and definitely an acknowledgement of the need to support the behaviors at the middle school. So in essence, we will have a dean-type position at all 3 buildings to support those behaviors. The executive summary is attached. If there are any questions, either Ben, myself, can address those, or Chad as well.
Any questions?
Does this person that we cut, did they have the qualifications to take this position? Or does it have to be reposted and someone else? How does that work?
The person that
I get it.
the person that was cut does have the qualifications for the position. Ben, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I got something caught in my throat. Yeah, so the person that was in the TOSA position last year is actually, she is working on her administrative licensure and has the education and the experience and knowledge to be able to do an excellent job as a behavior intervention teacher. I think this is intentionally not a dean position. It's someone who is going to be a behavior intervention teacher, similar to a math intervention teacher and a reading intervention teacher. So, yeah, so the TOSA position was cut through the budget reduction process, and then we were able to maintain the person through the ADSIS grant. If we didn't get this grant, then this person would have bumped back into the teacher, into a teaching position, so we would have lost another new teacher. So Chad worked really hard to get the grant approved, so just appreciate that and his hard work with that to support our middle school students and staff.
This is Tom. Is that just a grant for 1 year? How long does that last?
It's a 2-year grant that we have to reapply for it after this next coming fiscal year, so we can reapply for it. You can do a reading intervention, you can do a math intervention, you can do behavior intervention for this type of grant.
Thank you.
Yep.
So the cost of the TOSA that we cut was $55,000. How was the amount, the cost of the ADSIS intervention teacher cost at $101,900?
That's the cost of the teacher that would be in that position.
And that's determined by, it's not on our master contract. How is that determined?
That's salary and benefits. So that reflects the true salary and benefits of that particular staff member.
Okay,
That's the true cost.
okay. So the $55,000 in TOSA reduction was that wasn't everything.
Yep. That 55,000 is the new cost. So that's staff member that would have not been here anymore.
Yep.
That's the true cost of that particular staff member.
Okay.
So that's the savings, is because we wouldn't have been cutting that $101,000 position. That person would have gone back into the classroom.
Mhm.
We're cutting the new teacher position, which the true cost, salary and benefits was estimated at $55,000.
Okay.
Did I say that right, Amy?
Yeah, you did. And the ABSIS grant is specifically for schools to keep students out of special ed.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. This is Sandy.
Sandy, is there a second?
I'll second it. This is Connie.
Second from Connie. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Deb Pauley,
Yes?
Tom Vogel,
Yes.
Sandy Burke,
Yes.
Connie Hennon,
Yes.
Lauren Pedersen,
Yes.
Rob Langheim,
Yes.
Ryan Dainert.
Yes.
Motion carries. 10.3, review and act on the resolution regarding board control of the district's agency fund.
Amy, can you speak to this and how it is a GASB 45 requirement?
Yes, so this should be my last GASB 84 requirement that the board has to approve. And this scholarship fund is kept in our books. It's under Fund 9 in our eyes, but it's a trust and agency fund in the eyes of MDE. And because when these scholarships are given out, there's administrative involvement, meaning that the counselors look at the transcripts and they help decide who gets these scholarships. It has to be now run under Fund 1. And in that fund, there was approximately $143,000. And it's mostly CDs, and they were in place before I took the position of finance director.
So Amy, it will reflect, the general fund will reflect a higher balance when the audit is complete.
Yes,
Obviously,
it will
with this-
reflect. Yes, it will reflect a higher revenue balance, but all of these funds will go into a restricted fund balance of its own within Fund 1.
Questions for Amy? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve. This is Tom.
Tom, is there a second?
Second, this is Sandy.
Second from Sandy. Discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Oh, I'm sorry. Roll call.
Deb Pauley,
Yes.
Tom Vogel,
Yes.
Sandy Burke,
Yes.
Connie Hennon,
Yes.
Lauren Pedersen,
Yes.
Rob Langheim,
Yes.
Ryan Dainert.
Yes.
Motion carries. 10.4, review and act on the letter of agreement addressing teacher development and evaluation during peacetime emergency. Mr. Helgerson.
This is a model letter of agreement that was developed by the Minnesota School Boards Association, and it could be modified locally, which we did. We had a call last week. Tom and Ryan, Deb, and myself were part of that call with the Education Minnesota Jordan chapter. And really the purpose of the agreement is to, as it says, to modify that TD&E, the Teacher Development and Evaluation Model. There's a series of ways to have an annual review, whether it be a principal observation or a peer review or a portfolio assessment. All this does, a piece of what this does is it provides forgiveness or grace for some of those components. And the other thing that it does is it addresses tenure. So there are rules in Minnesota in terms of how many days you have to serve in order to achieve tenure, and this relaxes that rule as well. So we basically took out the pieces related to ATTPS, quality compensation. We are not a Q-comp school, so we took that piece out, and it remained relatively unchanged with one suggestion from EMJ, which addresses any teaching staff member that was on an improvement plan. Basically, it says that if the teacher's improvement plan cannot be completed due to distance learning and through no fault of the teacher, failure to complete that portion should not be considered failure to make adequate progress on that improvement plan. So that was the only addition from the MSBA language, minus the QComp language. Make sense? Clear as mud?
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Ryan, is there a second?
Second.
Second from Rob. Discussion or questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Deb Pauley,
Yes.
Tom Vogel,
Yes.
Sandy Burke,
Yes.
Connie Hennon,
Yes.
Lauren Pedersen,
Yes.
Rob Langheim,
Yes.
Ryan Dainert.
Yes.
Motion carries. 10.5, review and act on the 2020-2021 resolution for membership in the Minnesota State High School League. And I trust that all of our board members watched the video. It is a requirement that we watch that. Actually, it's pretty well done. It's pretty cute. It's only 6 minutes, and they really did a nice job on it. So then we have to act on the resolution for membership. Joe, do you want to talk about that at all? Is there anything? Can't read what you wrote.
Sorry, those of you with kids at home know you got to close the doors and get everything ready here before you start talking. Sorry. Yeah, so the video is well done. I got to view it last year in part of the Inside Out coaching cohort that I was a part of. I just posted in the chat there. I've known Jody for a long time. She was the assistant AD at Hopkins when I was a student there as a sophomore. Kind of followed her path and that role, and now here. So I think they're doing great work with the Inside Out coaching. It's been nice during this downtime. They've kind of created curriculum on the fly here for us ADs that are interested, and we meet every Wednesday morning. But yeah, the video is, I guess you kind of got to watch it. It's about 6 minutes long. It's just talks about kind of the purpose and everything. And I think I sent it to our coaches last year, end of last year, I think. So a lot of our coaches have seen it, and I know that it is a board requirement, I believe, as well. So check that out. As far as the membership goes, there is an increase in fees. I had talked to Amy about that a little while ago. We're going to see an activity increase up to $160 per activity. And then we'll also be adding an activity with Nordic skiing. So our number will go up a little bit there. And then there's $1 per MSHSL enrollment. So I think our MSHSL enrollment for next year stays the same at $570. So it'll be $570 there. And then sorry, I don't have the numbers in front of me. 160 times every MSHSL sponsored activity that we're a part of. And it doesn't matter if you're a co-op, you have that fee, just like we have to pay that for swimming and gymnastics. Last year we had to pay for it for swimming, even though we didn't have any swimmers. It's something the bill is due up, and without knowing registration numbers, we pay it just so there is that catastrophic insurance.
And the 160 is up from what was it, 140? I don't.
I actually did shower today. Aaron, can you see me? Am I in red now? No hat? So yeah, so that number, that the board voted on that. I believe it was I was actually at that board meeting up in Brooklyn Park. It was about 2 or 3 months ago. Increased it up to 160. So there's been some conversation. I'm trying maybe getting off topic a little bit about, these fees are going up. We're charged a $160 per activity, but we didn't have any spring activities this year yet. We are not. There's been no talk of a refund from the league for that payment. I think they're just going to eat it, and we're just going to have to deal with it.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution for membership.
So moved.
Rob, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Lauren. Discussion or questions for Joe? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Deb Pauley,
Yes.
Tom Vogel,
Yes.
Sandy Burke,
Yes.
Connie Hennon,
Yes.
Lauren Pedersen,
Yes.
Rob Langheim,
Yes.
Ryan Dainert.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Board and administrative reports. Mr. Helgerson.
Gosh, it's almost funny doing an enrollment report, but we still count students in our MARS system. Hope does that, and you know, we're down a little bit since April. We're up 1 elementary student, down 2 middle school students, and we stayed status quo, so we're down 1. Again, that's about 40 less than what we built our budget on. We all know that drill. And as I mentioned, I'd be concerned about next year, because I do think if we do go back to school in person, I think it's going to be very difficult to get an accurate enrollment count. I just don't know how we're going to know. But anyway, that's enrollment, commencement. We had a plan A and a plan B. I'm not even going to talk about plan A because that's not even possible. We have Saturday, May 30th as our date, and then Sunday, May 31st is the rain date. So I'll just talk specifically about plan B, and Jeff, you can certainly jump in if you have anything to add. So from 3 to 6 at this point in time, you know, this is obviously subject to change as well as we analyze the MDE guidelines, but we're looking at doing a diploma drive-through ceremony where students would be able to arrive, get out of their vehicle, come across the stage that would be set up in front of the high school, receive their diploma, and we have a plan. We'll have a plan to go through a loop similar to what we've done with the drop-off and pick-up. We'll have to work with the police department to make sure that that is all acceptable. But that's essentially the plan. We'll obviously have to follow any rules that the state shares with us. I mean, this is still some time out yet. May 18th is when the stay-at-home order ends, and we don't know obviously what will happen beyond that. So this is 12 days beyond that. We do know for sure that we are producing a virtual graduation video, and we plan on a YouTube premiere whatever evening we do graduation. It'll be from 7 to 8 o'clock p.m. and we'll do it via YouTube, and so families and graduates will be able to view that from their homes as well as community members, and it will be part of that celebration. So we're Kat is facilitating that, and she can certainly address any questions you might have about the virtual graduation, but we're using the same video company that we used several years ago when we produced our district video. So a local Minnesota company based out of Minnetonka. They do a nice job, and I know we're not the only district that's doing that. So in addition, graduates are going to receive their cap and gown, and their obviously their tassel as a keepsake. And Jostens has agreed to allow each student to keep their gown at no additional cost, which helps us out, so we don't have to pick that back up either. So Jeff is sending out more information about that and awards night, which we're hosting virtually on May 18th at 7 o'clock p.m. So Jeff, do you want to talk any more about graduation particularly?
No, I think as many of you are aware, it's been a frustrating, weird experience as we go through all these different pieces, and we've had multiple plans and multiple discussions, and slowly as MDE has given out their guidance, which in my own opinion has been a little late, we've adjusted and been able to adjust on the fly. I feel bad for some of my friends in the business who set up gymnasiums and set up fields at socially distanced marks and spent hours upon hours to find out that that wasn't even an option for them. But I'll get off that piece and just say that I think we've got a great plan. Matt and Kat have been great partners in coming up with ideas for our kids, and I think that we're going to make a great commencement out of a tough situation. And I think it really comes down to celebrating our kids' 13 years of hard work. It's just going to look different than we normally have had it, which is unfortunate, but I'm confident that we can do a great job of it and celebrate our kids.
Any questions or comments about graduation?
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Because maybe I missed this and maybe I'm confused. So we are doing the drive-through graduation, or I'm confused.
At this point, we're planning to do option B.
Okay, we are. Okay.
Unless we're told that that's not an option. We have to run that by the police department as well, now that we've sort of finalized that. So that's something that Jeff and I can work on the next day or two. Make sure that'll work. I'm guessing that we're gonna have to request some assistance from them to make sure that social distancing is followed. I would feel most comfortable by having their assistance anyway. It's gonna be difficult to control, and that's something that we really need to think about.
Agreed. That's why I was confused. I was under the impression we couldn't do that. So I'm pleased to hear that we possibly could, but I'm just wanting to, I was just wanting clarification.
If you read the guidance, if you take a look at that guidance document, it doesn't say that we can't. It says that we have to put measures in place. So like, for example, if we wanted to do a drive-in type ceremony, there's distance guidelines between cars. You know, with your windows up, and different distance guidelines if your windows are down. Well, what's the difference between that and a drive-through ceremony? I mean, there's really, to me, it's probably more controllable to do the drive-up diploma ceremony than it is to have cars sitting in a packed lot, you know, where there's just gonna be that many more cars. By having a 3-hour window, there'll be less cars also, so it becomes more controllable. So I don't see how it won't be acceptable based off of the guidelines that we have. Again, I feel like it's more controllable than a drive-in
Help me understand what a drive-in ceremony is. I mean, so you sit in a car with your windows rolled up and you tune your radio to a certain frequency and what is that?
Yep.
No, I think there's two different things. I think people are getting confused between the two. I would consider a drive-in ceremony would be where people park their cars like you would at a drive-in movie theater, and then everybody would sit and the ceremony would be on a stage or whatever. What we're proposing is a drive-through. So imagine going to McDonald's or Taco Bell and you drive through and get so in this case, parents and students would drive through the parking lot of Jordan High School, come up to the front of the building. We'd have a stage there. Student would get out. We would say their name, Ryan Dannert. Ryan would walk across the stage. We would somehow socially distance and give him his diploma. He'd walk down the other side, take pictures or smile, whatever, get back in the car, move ahead. Next car comes up, Sandy Burke, and et cetera. Does that make sense, the difference between the two?
Yeah, it does. I was more...
Okay. Yeah, so the drive-in was, they're renting screens for, we've seen $7,500 to rent the screen and get the FM channel. I mean, it's a hefty cost. Yeah. And then you have cars in a parking lot. So that's being pushed by vendors like you wouldn't believe.
But so like the students stay in the car? I don't understand.
What would they be seeing? Because according to the requirements, the kids can't get out of the car and go into the building and walk across the stage.
Jeff, I don't know. I haven't seen any since this guideline came out. I don't even know what day it was. Friday?
Yeah, Friday.
Friday morning. At 8:30 before it was released to the public at 9.
Yeah.
Not bitter about that at all, but I don't think there's been any advertisements since then for the drive-in. Have you seen them, Jeff?
No, I haven't seen anything about drive-in types of ceremonies. I mean, some people are still thinking that maybe they can pull that off, but I haven't. I think with the drive-through, when I read through their guidance, it does not say that all kids have to stay in their vehicles, but maybe I'm misreading what it says.
No, but I think what it said was if the cars were parked closer than 6 feet apart, they should have to keep their windows up. to me, you know, this is a rite of passage, right? Like at some point, aside from the ceremonial nature and the rite of passage of how this works, it doesn't really matter, right? Like that's the importance. And so like, what are the elements that are the most important or the most memorable? Certainly if we're gonna have a ceremony where somebody's name is called and they're able to walk across the stage and get a diploma, the circumstances may not be ideal, but to me that's better than somebody sitting in a car listening to, I mean, sorry, I probably wouldn't have shown up at my graduation if the only thing to do was listen to the commencement speaker, right? Like I was there for the ceremony for myself, right? So that's the thing that I think we need to fight to maintain.
So the video will have all the traditional components. It'll have kids' names being read instead of obviously the child crossing the stage. Their picture pops up with all of their different honors and things like that they've been awarded. And you know, it'll be the speeches. There's music component. All those different pieces are being part of that video. We're talking it is that rite of passage piece and just that little component of the rite of passage where the child pulls up. We'll have, whether it's Jeff or myself or 3 other people, whatever it is, you know, we'll have a small staff on hand taking precautions. We'll radio to Jeff. I'd radio, let's say I was going to the car, I'd radio to Jeff, hey, so-and-so's here. That child would get out, or that graduate would get out. The stage is set up. Jeff will read that student's name, that graduate's name. They'll be able to come out and get their actual diploma. Now, we've also talked about maybe we have to have an alternative if, you know, if families don't want to participate or graduates don't want to participate in that, you know, we might have to have an alternative time for graduates just to pick up their diplomas as well if they don't wish to even participate in that symbolic piece of the ceremony.
That's a good point you bring up. Have we reached out to the students to see what their opinion is, or have we done a survey to them or anything like that?
What are they gonna say?
Yeah. You know, it's still, it's their rite of passage. I just kind of
But
thought
there's
I'd
not,
ask the question.
But what options would there even be?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's such a limited, this is what you can do, there's really not a whole lot of choice.
I guess
Are we thinking about, in terms of the 3 hours, is it kind of come when it's most convenient to you?
It's like
or
an open house style.
But I
Yep.
guess kind of raising kind of the concern that you had in terms of just kind of managing kind of crowd control.
Mhm.
So we have 140 or so kids that are graduating, 3-hour window.
Yep.
It's about 23 kids that we've got to pass the diploma out kind of every half hour. What have you guys kind of talked about, kind of potentially kind of queuing it so that, you know, last name A through D comes at, you know, first half hour, second half hour, to be able to kind of maintain a little bit of that crowd control? And then if we were to be able to do that, does that give us a little bit of flexibility of kind of being able to kind of pass through some kind of, kind of to your point, kind of some sort of kind of ceremonial thing besides just kind of the, you know, you're kind of getting a burger at McDonald's and picking up your diploma type of thing? Just curious. I know that you guys have probably come up with like 1,400 different options as you've kind of thought through this, but just kind of curious of.
The fine details haven't been, you know, given out yet, partly because we don't know.
Sure, yeah. No, I totally understand.
What's gonna happen between May 18th, when the executive order expires, and May 30th. You know, we had this plan out, Wednesday last week? And we got the guidance on Friday. We didn't meet on it today to look at that. We have had discussions whether or not we do it by alphabet. We didn't do, for example, the device distribution for grades 3 and 4. We did that more of that open house, and it worked well. It worked fine. So we were thinking that this would probably go along that same line, but it's certainly something that we've talked about, right, Jeff?
Yeah, a couple of things, Lauren. I have talked with our executive board 2 different times of our seniors, and just through other conversations where I haven't talked with the whole class, and I haven't done a survey, mainly for the reason that I meet twice weekly with local principals, And what we found is the local principals that did surveys with kids and parents, they came up with one idea, and then that's not an idea that could be done. And then it ended up being the public was more upset because they were asked what they wanted and then told no. So we've just had smaller conversations and more informal conversations.
Well,
And
I'm glad to hear that at least.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
my question would be more not how, but whether they want some type of physical graduation or not, right? Because I can see where, I mean, if you go down a, too many menu of options, I want to do it in the gymnasium versus this, but more, just, I think what you're getting at is like,
How many
to
are we
what
actually gonna
Yeah.
have participate? We might be going down the path of doing this in
I
our,
think that the vast majority will want to put on their gowns and caps and walk across the stage in front of the building they went to the last, how many years?
I do like
The sense-
Rob's idea with the queued times. You're not going to have 100% adherence to it, but at least you're not going to have everybody showing up at 3:01.
Yeah, I guess
That's my concern.
what I would hope for is, and I know you guys are going to do this, and you're going to make it's the best experience that we can, but I think that in terms of certainly maintaining social distancing, adhering to the different guidelines that we have, but then also being able to build upon some of the things that we have been able to do kind of within this environment, kind of with the meals that we're giving out every day and some of the different kind of interactions that it certainly would be nice if we came up with some kind of creative solution to create a little bit of kind of that experience kind of dynamic that still protects everybody and doesn't necessarily put the district in jeopardy, but that we're able to kind of, again, kind of create a little bit of kind of that memory that we have under the circumstances. And I'm sure you guys will come up with something, but I guess at least kind of from my perspective, I really hope that we can continue to kind of push and find what that acceptable solution is, because this is a big deal, and
Yes.
we want to honor it accordingly.
Can I was just going to say, I hadn't done the math until Rob, you said that. And I was like, oh, wow, I never thought of that. It's 180 minutes and 144 graduates. And so that's assuming that everybody shows up. And I'm guessing not everybody will show up, but let's say even 100 show up, you're going to have basically 2 minutes from the times, like the person pulls up. They have to radio, right, to figure out who it is and get the diploma ready. They have to get out of the car, go across the stage, and I think we're taking a picture, and then get back in the car. So that's a really short amount of time. So, and I'm sure you guys have thoroughly vetted this and thought of that, but it just occurred to me that that's really tight.
Yep. And here's the problem, is there's going to be 250 opinions. And here's the thing. They don't even want us to do what we're saying we're going to do. Honestly, they want us to do virtual graduation ceremonies. That's the bottom line. And we're trying to, we have that in place, thankfully, and then honestly thank Kat for having the foresight to really jump on that. Otherwise, we may have nothing, okay? So we had to sign a contract. We had to get on board with that early, because it's too late now. If we were to decide tomorrow, it's too late. And all we're trying to do is develop one more piece that, to a lot of your points, honors the graduate in a some level of traditional format. And it's not going to be even close to what we want it to be. I can't even imagine if Ellie, who will be a senior next year, is my first child graduating, I'm heartbroken for, and I think the parents are taking it harder than the kids, quite honestly. I'm heartbroken.
The kids are taking it hard. The kids I know are.
Yeah.
Again, I think the parents are projecting a lot of this too, but I think
I would agree with you.
Matt, this is Kat.
We can't control it. We can't control it. The one thing I will agree with from what's being handed down from the government is this virus is bigger than us, and we are just pawns in its life cycle. And it stinks, and we acknowledge that it stinks. I just don't know what else we can do beyond what we're doing.
Kat?
Yeah, if you don't mind me interjecting too, I think definitely looking at these guidelines, and they can be confusing at times because it'll say on the guidelines that if your school decides to distribute materials like caps and gowns, there's supposed to be curbside pickup, following social distancing, wearing cloth masks. So if some of those things start to work their way into a drive-up ceremony, that may also, inform people about what decision they want to do to partake. And that'll take us a couple of days to kind of figure out what that ceremony really would look like. Because it is interesting to imagine if staff has to be at that ceremony in masks, handing out or putting a piece of paper on a table for somebody to take, or for the student to take. And if we are potentially not allowed to, or families are not allowed to get out of their car in any way to take a photo, that could also be challenging to what this whole thing looks like. And we just don't really have all those answers right now, I think.
I'm really struggling with what's allowed. So when I go on Google and try to understand what the definition of guidance is, it's not very helpful in this situation.
Welcome to MDE.
The definition is to guide, right? Provide advice. That doesn't sound like a law or regulation. And what I struggle with in this entire thing, and I respect, it takes a long time to plan these things. So you need to kind of understand now what you're able to do, because you just can't put it together on the fly. But better or worse, where we are on May 29th or June 7th or whenever somebody might have graduation is going to be different than where we are now. And what I guess was disappointing to me about these guidelines is how specific they were and how,
They feel like a mandate, not a guideline.
Well, they sound like a
no,
law.
not only,
Yeah.
okay, so not only do they sound like a law, right? They're being referenced in that way by the governor. The words banned, in-person graduation ceremonies banned was used on Fox 9 News. Yet this is this document is very, here it is, just kind of, and I don't think that, I feel like we're treating this in a way that we don't necessarily treat other guidance, right? Like, you were supposed to go till, what was it, June 4th with your distance learning? That's a guidance. Do we need to do it? Do we not need to do it? But this, to me, there's two relevant things. What is the law and what is the executive order that's in force at the time of the graduation?
There's one big difference, though, Ryan,
Okay.
if I may interrupt
Sure.
you. If the governor's executive order, stay-at-home order, is extended beyond the 18th, which in some way, shape, or form is probably likely, right? The congregate size, or part of the executive order is that it can be no larger than a group of 10?
Currently, yeah.
So that's the difference between ending the school year, on June 4th versus May 30th or May 22nd. May 29th, I guess. May 29th, May 22nd are sort of our benchmarks. And have a graduation ceremony where we would be violating the congregate size of greater than 10.
But that's my point, okay? So my point is, and again, I've over the last couple of days had to really think about, separate what's best for the kids and what's best for the graduates from, philosophy, right? But to your exact point, absence this guidance, I'm not sure that the football field scenario would have been allowed, from whether it's 10 people or 50, whatever the executive order said at the time. That's where, to me, though, within those guidelines, you can't have more than 10 people in one place. Okay, well, that's the guidelines then, and let local districts then be creative within the guidelines that are actually the regulations or laws or executive orders of the state of Minnesota at the time. But that's not what this is. This is, it doesn't like my voice.
It's like a drum beat.
This reference school input, I'm not sure which schools they were, but it just seems like there was a it's putting us in one of two very narrow boxes, it seems like, with what your options are, without saying these are your two narrow boxes. Just these are the 12 things that you can't do.
I mean, I completely agree. I don't want to get into a political philosophy, but I think part of this is political. I do think the original order, I think it's changed personally. I think the governor's original order was to build capacity in the healthcare system. It was to make sure that there was enough PPE, there was enough ventilators, and now it's shifted to let's just make sure nobody gets sick. And I think that's where people are struggling, including myself, are struggling with this. How can I go to Menards on Friday night and pick up lumber with a mask on, but yet I can't have a graduation ceremony? And I think that's where people are getting all upset about. We have to remember, we didn't make the rules. We didn't drive the executive order. We can't explain why the candy barn can be open with 200 and some people in it, but yet we can't have 100 or 350 people at a on-field graduation ceremony. I can't explain it either, other than I don't know.
But to some degree, though, from a kind of just a probability standpoint, that if we are to say that these guidelines are some sort of foreshadowing that the stay-at-home order is going to get extended, and so we're creating kind of this plan B, or we're anticipating this plan B under those types of conditions in the kind of the drive-through kind of format, where we're going to maintain social distancing, where we're not going to have more than 10 people because of the people that are potentially handing out the diploma and the people that are driving through, and the planning that would kind of be involved there, that we could kind of find a solution that fits within, if we were having this ceremony today, as an example, kind of within stay at home. Do we have confidence that that Plan B scenario we could execute under kind of the guidelines or the laws that we have in place today? Because then maybe that kind of helps inform to what this could look like. Because I do understand that, where maybe they're, you know, kind of saying this is coming without us officially saying that this is coming, and so plan accordingly so we don't get caught flat-footed. I kind of appreciate that, but at the same time too, I totally appreciate the timing that it requires to do something like this and make sure that we do it the right way, which obviously we're going to.
I mean, do I think we can execute Plan B if it were tomorrow? I think we could.
Is Plan B in compliance with current order?
I believe it is.
Yeah.
So then,
which I think that's what we need to know. I mean, that gives us confidence level, as much confidence as we can have under these ambiguous times.
and I think that's how we need to engage, you know, the police department, everybody else, is this is our plan. This is a nice document from MDE, but does this plan comply with the laws of the state of Minnesota and the executive orders as they are today? I can't control what they are on May 30th. If it becomes more restrictive, then I guess we have a virtual event. But that would be, you know, to me, that's the path we take.
But I guess in my mind, I think that, yes, is there a likelihood that they could be more restrictive? Yes, but probably they're going to be just the same, or they're going to open them up a little bit. And so then that, you know, that's advantageous to us, but we want to plan at the most restrictive level possible if we're going to even do something that's beyond a virtual solution.
Based on the call today, it sounded like there was absolutely no way there was going to be an in-person graduation allowed.
But what does that? I just don't understand what that means. Or what? I mean, is it a funding issue? Why is there not an in-person graduation allowed? Because that's not an authorized reason.
I got a call after from the attorney at MSBA. They're looking at it from the legal perspective for districts.
Yeah,
saying, you know, that if somebody would somebody would claim they got COVID from it, then the liability would be on the district, basically, is what it amounts to. How would
I mean,
you-
look, and I don't think.
Prove
As a
it.
non-attorney, for all of the multiple ways that you could potentially get that.
Yeah. I agree.
I don't
Especially with
think
the
we need
Apple
to worry
Bar.
about
Well,
that from a district
Just
standpoint.
opening up.
I agree.
But I mean, but again, we're talking about things that we can't necessarily control, so, I mean, it is what it is.
And I'm not advocating for us to take a stand as Jordan necessarily either, but I think
Right.
some of the question is, you know, we're paying for multiple associations, whether it's the superintendents or the principals or the school board association. And I don't know if everybody's just throwing up their hands on this one, but it is interesting to me that, you know, this is being done in such a way that it's not part of an executive order. It's being produced by a department, right? In a way that, you know, in the future, it wasn't my order, wasn't the force of law. These were suggestions, and, you know, we have, Minnesotans are Minnesota nice and conscientious, and they just went along with the guidelines as they were.
I do know
Put
that
out there.
both the House and the Senate, some of them have written signed on to a letter that's gone to Governor Dayton and to MDE, but I don't think it'll probably go anywhere.
I mean, I know the associations are meeting daily with the different legislative branches, but I mean, in the end of the day, the Department of Health is being used and the CDC is being used as the standard, and this is, I mean, that's, on that call today, that was
Yeah.
basically you could have just hit repeat.
Exactly. I mean,
But-
she didn't
but I mean,
answer.
as far-
There was a couple districts that, in the chat room, they said they have 7 graduates, and they're like within 15 miles of the South Dakota border. And they said, South Dakota is allowing graduations. It's like 7 graduates, and they can't have a ceremony.
Well, and even go back.
Why? I mean, you could keep it under the current 10 limit.
But go back to distance learning, okay?
Yeah.
From the very onset, those questions were being asked by superintendent. I sat and I listened to every call. Those were being asked. Hey, we got 23 kids in our entire grade. Can we develop a model where we bring in one, you know, at a high school, we bring in one grade level at a time and space them out and educate those kids on a rotational basis? I mean, those plans were, no, you may not do that, you may not let, I mean, even the level of interpretation among districts, there are some districts that are our neighbors, have not allowed anybody to set foot in their facility, including their superintendents. They sit at home. I mean, we have been very liberal in terms of our access requirements from the very onset. And some of our employees have been upset at that. It's caused division amongst the superintendent groups. This has become a very polarizing issue. And that's why it's so complex. Because it's political, it's polarizing, I mean, there are people with different viewpoints, there are people that have different levels of fear. That's certainly a component of it. It'd be great if we could bring in every one of our kids that has an IEP right now. Just go pick them up and bring them in and provide direct one-on-one instruction. And why can't we?
And that was asked in the call today, and we didn't get an answer on that either.
You know, we have enough space in all 3 physical buildings to be able to do that. But again, I think that's what's been most frustrating is the lack of timeliness, is that even the right phrase? A timeliness issue in terms of getting the information. I mean, we found out that we needed to develop a plan for distance learning on a Sunday morning, and we had our staff coming in that following day. We found out about graduation at 8:30 a.m. and the public received it at 9. We found out that distance learning was going to be extended through the end of the year, literally in the morning of that it was released to the public. In fact, the news agencies knew before the school districts did. Those are the issues that I have, is we are not getting the information in time to make adequate plans, or we're making multiple plans only to find out that none of them work. And it gets, I mean, people are just wore out. And I know we meet, our team, our leadership team meets every morning at 8 o'clock virtually, and we discuss all of the guidance thoroughly from the MDE from the day before. We talk through problems and solutions, and we're just doing the very best that we can locally. And that's all we can promise our public, is that we're gonna do the very best we can. And we can make, we're a speedboat. I heard that in our facility planning. We can make adjustments, tweaks, little pieces to make whatever we have on the 30th special right up until the 28th. I mean, that's the difference between us and Anoka Hennepin. Does that make sense? I mean, I just think we're just more adaptable, and that's been a really nice aspect of our districts during this whole thing. So
They had a really good plan though for commencement too, that would have
But from a principal perspective, from a superintendent perspective, when you're participating on these calls, are they just didactic and you're getting information from them in terms of what's going on, or are they seeking out input from what you're seeing in kind of the different districts?
So the first part of these calls is we're getting that information, and then the second half of the call is a Q&A session where they're taking input and they're taking questions. Okay. And really, again, I'll probably get, I don't really care. It feels to me that if you, like I brought up several questions on the calls, and it feels like the next day the guidance document will slap our hands if we ask the question. You know, for example, I said, okay, I don't understand, and it maybe not even the Commissioner of Ed's issue, but I don't understand how a private daycare facility, a YMCA or a whatever, name a private organization, can operate for fee for non-essential and non-emergency workers, children, but a school daycare program cannot operate. It makes 0 sense at all to me. And the answer back was, that's a good point. We really don't have an answer for that. And then the next day we get in bold, school districts may not operate for fee during this distance learning period. It is for emergency and essential workers only. So to answer your question, it almost feels like they're taking that input, but then they're providing clarity in the form of, okay, since you asked that, here's another regulation to throw at you.
Right.
Right.
And on the funding questions, we can ask for funding till we're blue in the face. Guess what? There's no money.
There's no money.
And there's not going to be any money for a long time.
I understand. But the other thing that I guess bothered me was just this whole idea of, school districts floating, doing something later in the summer. And it's like, that's summarily dismissed because we can't tell the future. Well, to me, that's why that should still be out there as an option. And I mean, how's it any different than, team one wins the NBA championship? They have their ring ceremony in like November. I mean, I think it'd be cool if we could do everything we can now, but, and this is a big assumption obviously, but assuming that right before school starts in the fall, you could actually have football games and there's some type of thing that, whenever that time is, it'd be cool to invite the graduates back that can be, obviously some of them might be off to school or whatever, but just to do something. I mean, it seems like this should be a time of a lot of creativity, and it seems like goal number one of the state is to make sure they squash the creativity.
And I think the danger in that is that we're gonna see a lot of parents and a lot of students taking risks and doing their own thing that's gonna put them in more danger than if we would have been allowed to.
That will happen. You are gonna have graduation parties around the state as if no order is in place. I can just about guarantee you that.
Okay. Anything else, Matt?
Sandy.
I've been trying to say something for a while. I just want to say that what I said was not a criticism of anything that anybody has been doing. I wanted to make that abundantly clear. I was just curious. I'm not sure. I'm trying to visualize how it will work. If we, doing the drive-through. I am not opposed to it. I am not saying that at all. And I know that you guys have put in a tremendous amount of work and thought and time into this. So I just wanted to make it clear. I do have a senior. Okay. And I'm heartbroken as well. I mean, but I want to make sure that this is, and I know that you all will make sure that it is the best that it absolutely can be. And I have trust in the school district that that will happen. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that, because I felt like people felt like I was attacking, and I was not at all. That was not a criticism. It was just a question to find out, okay, well, really, how is that going to work? Because I never thought about the whole 3-hour thing and how many graduates we actually really do have. But I do appreciate everything that everybody has done. And I just want to say that because, I do have a graduate who I have been waiting for 13 years to walk across that stage. And it absolutely breaks my heart that, it won't be the traditional ceremony. I won't be able to give him his diploma. That's something that I've looked forward to for a very long time. And it's not going to happen. But I just want to say I support what the district is doing, and that I appreciate everything that you've done.
Hey, Sandy, thank you for that. Number one, Sandy, just two things, actually, not number one, number two. Number one, you certainly can still hand your son his diploma because you're in the same family and in the same household. So that to me, that dream is still there. And I think you should take advantage of that you can do whatever you're comfortable with. I mean, you're in the same house with Sam. Why couldn't you be within 6 feet of him? So
I thought we weren't allowed to get out of the car. I'm confused.
You can be the school board member that's standing next to the stage. We have all kinds of things we can do for you. I mean, that's easy.
Well, thank you. I don't want to have any special favors or anything. That's been my mantra all along. But I don't know. I was not clear that parents could get out of cars, because that'll just add to the amount of time, right?
Those are small details, Sandy, that I'm confident we can figure out. And if you need to just sprint down the sidewalk to catch up to your car, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
And then secondly, just so everybody's on the same page with this or aware, we have like 12 staff members that are always assigned to graduation. I envision them being in their PPE, directing traffic. We would have traffic spooning or swirling in and out of our parking lots. I'm making hand gestures right now that you can't see, but we would be able to move traffic along efficiently, and so that we keep our social distance and we keep reminding people to stay in their cars. We'll be able to keep some of those distances. I envision that the car that is pulling up to have their student get out and cross the stage would be in one spot. The next, we'd have a stop sign or a portable stop sign that'd be 10 feet behind that. So we would be able to keep our distance. A couple other things since I'm rambling here. One is that I've been thinking that we should just allow it to be open house. And the reason for that is, for Sandy, she may want to hear Logan Schmidt get his name called. Or there might be somebody else that they're close with that they want to hear that student's name called. And so if they want to work together to have their group hear each other's names be called, I think that's something that's nice. But if we do it by alphabet, they might fall out of that. Just that's my own thought. I haven't brainstormed it any further than that. And then secondly, based on one of Lauren's questions, the two things that students have shared with me that they've said are really important are, one, being together, which we're not going to be able to address it fully. And number two is to walk across the stage and have that rite of passage of walking across the stage, getting their diploma, flipping their tassel to the other side. And that piece we can meet. And so those are just some things that students have shared with us. So I guess I'll answer any questions after I just babbled for a while.
I think I just wanted to add one thing with the virtual video that we are going to put together. I know that our district does an amazing job with all of that type of marketing materials and things like that, Kat. So I know that's going to probably be one of the most amazing keepsakes that kids are going to have that's going to be special for them for this year.
So would we, if we did something with a stage, would we film that?
We hadn't planned on that.
It'd be nice if we.
Seems like it'd be a nice, I mean, I hear this video and I understand where you guys are going with it. I think it'd be cool to like cut all of the
I agree.
kids walking across into one video. Maybe that's not the same timeline. That might be a post-production thing that's after the fact, but.
I would think we'd have to hire somebody for that. Just because I would assume that the person who would normally do that also has a graduate this year. So.
Would the kids get a copy of the video?
All kids are going to have access to their commencement video. It'll live forever.
Okay.
I think that's a good idea. I'm sure there's probably somebody out there in the
Yeah, I mean,
community that has videography
I
skills
have
that
very
can stand
basic
back
skills, but if
20
somebody
feet
can,
and.
if somebody can take the video, just cutting it so that it's, you know, the 20-second snippets or
Yep.
whatever is not terribly difficult.
Okay, I think we've beat this horse. This is all I have talked about all day today.
It's all we've talked about for the last month.
Anything else, Matt?
No.
Okay. Jeff, anything from your report you want to highlight?
Nope. Any questions? I think we've talked about everything that has been swirling in my brain for the last 8 weeks.
Any questions? Okay. Ben, how about you? Thank you, Jeff.
Even though if he's still here.
Ben, are you still with us?
Yep.
Melissa?
Oh.
Whoops.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Deb. I have to hit unmute. I'm still learning that. It's only been a couple months. But no, nothing that I would highlight other than just seeing if there's any questions in my report.
Anybody? Okay, Melissa?
She's not on the call.
I have a question though for Melissa or for whoever. We never had a kindergarten roundup, so where are we at with kindergarten registration and kindergarten numbers this year? How do we know what we're projecting for teachers for kindergarten next year?
We're taking registrations right now. So, that's gone out multiple reminders to all the families that we know have kindergarten age kids, so.
Do we know what numbers we're looking at right now? That's okay if you don't.
I don't.
Okay.
What's the normal timeline for that process of identifying those kindergarten students? Is it something that we start in the spring, or is it something that we work with our preschool teachers to identify early on? And so parents, while they're at meeting with preschool teachers in the fall, are getting reoccurring reminders that, hey, you got this coming, hey, you got this coming.
Yep, that's what we use right there.
Okay.
And obviously, Roundup is a part of it. They did have before we went into distance learning, there was a kindergarten parents, more of an open house model this year, and Roundup was set to be later. It was kind of a new model. We're trying to capture the parents first and then bring the kids in for the excitement second, and obviously that second piece didn't happen. So we're taking registrations. They can drop them off in that drop box right outside the elementary school, or they can mail them in. I'll get an account and send that number out to you guys.
You know, and not that anybody needs any more work, but what about doing a virtual kindergarten roundup? I mean, was that considered at all?
Hasn't been
to
talked
promote about it? Okay. I'm just concerned about numbers for next year.
Or even
so.
just, I'm assuming if we have mailing addresses for packets, we have phone numbers, right? And just.
They've all been called multiple times.
Okay.
Yep.
Do we do anything with the in-home daycare providers too, related to kindergarten roundup and kind of getting?
We have the census, and any family that we know that has that age kid,
we may be in a situation too where it's just not going to happen quickly because of the uncertainty, right? And unfortunately, you're going to get swamped a week before school.
It's been slow. I mean, it's been slower the last several years. Like this time of the year, we're lucky to have 80 kids registered the last several years, and then they trickle in throughout the summer. So it's unfortunate we weren't able to get a roundup in earlier this year.
Do we have a projection from last year's early childhood?
We were looking at 140, I believe. 135, 140.
So it'd be
somewhere in
up a
there.
little bit
Yep.
from where we're at. Fingers crossed, we're gonna need them. Okay, activities director, Joey, you still on?
I'm here.
Anything you wanna highlight from your report?
We landed on a lettering policy for our spring athletes. We, as coaches, met and we all decided it'd be better to over letter than to under letter. Instead of saying, varsity returners, this or that, we're lettering all of our seniors. I don't need to go through the whole thing, but any underclassmen who writes a goal of any kind and has a one-on-one meeting with the coach to go over those goals for next year, we will give a letter. Then any 8th or 9th graders who potentially had a chance of being on varsity, those would be coach invites. So that is all set for that. We are working on refunds now. Unfortunately, Chad, who's on this call, did not get our email blast. We had a couple of people miss the email. So I don't know what happened there. Most got it, but some slipped through the cracks. So we just need to double check on who we might be missing. So once we get that narrowed down in the next week or so, we'll reach out to those who have not responded and reach out to them directly.
Any questions for Joel? Thank you. Stephen, anything on the community ed front?
Just a couple of things to note on my report. I had put in that 76 registration for Summer Kids Code. That has now risen to above 90, which is more than what we've had in the past. Still waiting on Governor to give us the okay for what summer's going to look like. Just got an email about 15 minutes ago from another director, says he may have heard that the governor is going to make a decision on summer possibly tomorrow. Now we will poke all the holes we can possibly poke in, and it will change 45,000 times before next week.
Mm-hmm.
But we will do our best. We have a plan just to move forward with fee-based programming. The CERC is almost ready. Our plan is to be ready by next Monday in case that the governor does not extend his executive order, but our plan is to be ready and have our members back in our building with a plan in place, and communication will be sent out to them once we know if and when we can open. Another thing is brightening is our trap shooting is a go. They have canceled the actual state tournament, but the league is still going to happen, and there's actually some places that have already started, and then I think our group may have started either tonight or tomorrow. They have a plan in place as a club, as well as following the gun club's policy for trap shooting.
Interesting. Thank you, Stephen. Any questions for Stephen? Thanks, Stephen. Kat? Anything on your report?
Well, the one thing I thought I would just draw attention to is we did a very quick welcome to kindergarten video. It's on my report. If you link on it, it takes you to the Countdown to K page, which walks people through at this time how to enroll. So it's a different version of what we would typically do on that page, but we adjusted it for where we are now. And so we just put that video there, and certainly we could try to use that video in other places as well, because it has our lovely kindergarten staff speaking to some of the real big highlights, overarching highlights. It's a pretty short video, but it's nice for people to see their faces. So that could be used other places too.
Questions for Kat? I just want to thank you, Kat, for the nice job over the past weeks with all the communications with not only COVID, but with Matt's decision. You've done a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrea? Anything from food services?
I just highlight that Andrea wrote a grant to MDE, an equipment grant, and we learned last week that we were awarded an $8,000 award there. So Andrea is good at always taking advantage of those opportunities and trying to get dollars coming in. So.
And we still don't know if the meal program is going to be required throughout the summer.
My understanding is it'll end on June 4th, and that's what we're planning on.
Okay.
And same with e-care, and we haven't been told that it needs to extend beyond our calendar year.
Okay. Okay, Chad, are you with us?
Yep.
Yes, I am.
Anything you want to highlight?
The biggest thing for me is just summer school, extended school year, how that's going to be provided. A lot of my colleagues and I, we've been just having conversations about, what's extended school year going to look like, especially with it being on distance learning, and how are the services going to be provided, and just making sure that we're going to provide quality services for these kids over the summer. So that's kind of been hot and heavy on our plates right now as directors. And so, but I mean, yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Okay. Thank you. I had a question for Amy, if Amy's still on. Amy, what numbers are you using for the revised budget moving forward for next year?
I just did the revised revenue budget, and I'm doing it at a count of, I believe, 1887. And I did that because of the drop in enrollment that we've just had.
Yeah, because I anticipate that enrollment will be down. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'm also working on the revised revenue budget, or the adopted budget for next year, and I have to talk to Matt about what to do with the enrollment for that.
Okay. Okay.
So we're anticipating discussing it deeper at our work session, the second meeting in May.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, school board member reports, committee reports, Booster Club.
Yep, I'll do it. No, we've continued to meet monthly. It's been a little bit different just because of COVID in terms of fundraising. That some of the big fundraisers we've kind of deferred or haven't been able to participate in, but we have been able to make some donations for the spring sports, which is good. And probably the only other kind of big announcement is that not this Wednesday, next Wednesday at the next booster board meeting, we're going to open it up for some openings for members, so board membership. So if there's anybody who is interested and willing to participate, or if you know somebody, definitely let them know.
Sounds good. Thank you. Curriculum and technology, did we meet in April?
We met in April and May,
Yep,
but it was virtually.
Okay. Anything on that? Connie, are you on?
I am. I think we skipped Erin, but she had everything listed in her report.
Oh, I'm sorry, Erin. We'll come back
It is
to you.
okay. I forgive you.
We'll come back to you. Connie, do you want to cover curriculum meeting?
It was just everything in report. We talked about grading, talked about distance learning, talked about, equity and making everything available for the kids. So it pretty much was all of that.
Okay. Okay, Erin, I'm sorry. I'll come back to you now.
I don't really have much to add off of my report. The focus really has just been on that equity in grading and equity in distance learning, putting together the staff development for the May 1st and 4th that was mandated, and really just supporting teachers through all this. So the other little things are just listed in the report, like finishing up the non-existence MCA testing, and also a big thing is taking what we've learned from distance learning and how do we now keep that momentum of teachers, trying new things and stepping outside of the box into next year. So just focusing on that as well.
Okay. Thank you. Meet and confer. Ryan, you want to take it?
I don't remember the last time we did that.
Well,
It was
2 weeks ago.
yeah, that was the TD&E thing, right? No, it wasn't. Oh,
was
what was it? That was separate.
Yeah, I don't think I've been to one since distance learning.
Okay. I was there, but I don't remember what we talked about.
I was there too. It wasn't,
There was nothing controversial or nothing.
no, the only thing that really was, asked was, it was really kind of a casualty of distance learning. It was a posting.
Oh, right, at the
posting
elementary, yeah.
At the elementary,
Mhm.
which, there was just a miscommunication on, the posting came across on the computer, but because we all get like 800 emails a day, I didn't approve it, so, and Melissa had thought it was approved and received an application from an internal candidate, moved forward with that, and there were some questions about that. So the correction was open the position back up, allowed people to apply, and there was an interview process. So really that was the only question that was brought up of substance and meet and confer. We talked from a district end, we just talked about making sure grades were updated on a weekly basis, especially during the distance learning period where parents want that constant feedback, and so do students.
Okay, joint powers.
I feel like that was canceled.
No, we had it.
We did?
Yep.
Yeah, we met with Joint Powers. They just kind of went over a lot of the stuff that he had in his report, the registrations, the loss of registrations, and just kind of a plan if we can get back to action for having the CERC open again.
Okay. Scale?
I don't think we've met.
No scale meetings. They've all been canceled.
Okay. Okay. Any board members have any things they want to share?
Hi, Jackie.
That's funny.
Well, I think all of us had an opportunity the other night to express our thanks to Matt and our sadness that you're going to be leaving us, but we're happy for you. So hopefully you watched the video, but if any board members want to reiterate.
No, it's okay.
We'll all start crying.
Yeah.
I honestly, sometime I will watch, but I have not watched it yet, but I thank you in advance for your kind words. It's difficult. I don't want to rehash last week. It was a hard week, but it's been a really good run. So I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for your support, guidance, your hard work and efforts, and for my team, one of which is here present. We wouldn't have had a great run without you, so thank you.
Okay.
And hopefully Jordan will work with me in the future.
I hope so too.
It's a shameless plug.
Okay.
Tom?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call?
Polly?
Yep.
Tom Vogel?
He left.
Sandy Burke?
She left.
Oh, my bad.
Oh. They all said yes. We're good.
As long as we got the majority here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
yes.
They're yeses too. We are adjourned.
Whoops.